But what you said about consuming other people's content, and you never know what's going to show up on your phone. It might be something that agitates you or aggravates you. It might be positive, most likely isn't. It might also give you FOMO right before bed, right? It's Tuesday night and your friends are out. You're in bed because like Michael Chernow told you were supposed to be, and your friends didn't invite you out. Hey, now the wheels are spinning. You're caught in the cycle all over again. Like, no good comes of scrolling before bed.
An entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow. What's cracking?
Ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else, welcome back to the Kreatures of Habit podcast. Today, I am fired up with my guest, Jaime Filer. We're going to talk a lot today about fitness and mental health and how those two things are almost necessary, in my opinion, for happiness. We think a lot about happiness or success as the things that we have or the things that we don't yet have and are trying to get. And really, at the end of the day, for me, throughout my experience in life, it's been about how I feel when I wake up in the morning. And that is what defines success for me. And I have not always felt good in the morning. And so I've done a lot of things over the years to try to figure out better ways to feel better in the morning and better when I put my head down at night. And I'm here to tell you that fitness and working on my mindset and mental health are the two things that have consistently helped me be a better human being. So Jaime is here today to talk to us about that stuff. Jaime has been in the world of fitness coaching for almost 2 decades. She is a massive mental health advocate. She specializes in the LGBTQ plus community, really trying to help people feel better, overcome overwhelm and stress and anxiety, helping people find themselves through fitness and through mindset. And so I'm really, really excited to have Jaime here to talk with us about her experience, the tactics that she uses. I know that she has a very specific technique that she uses that she's developed herself. And I'm just excited to get into this conversation. Welcome.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I think if there's anyone more fired up to be here, it's me. Yeah. First time caller, long time listener is I think what they say.
You know, we've been communicating for probably about a year now on Instagram, on social media.
Yep.
And you know, I was funny. This morning I was every Tuesday and Wednesday I write an email newsletter to the community, the Creatures community. Mm-hmm. And over the last 3 months or so, these newsletters have become far less about like cool things that I want to share with the community and way more about my life and things that I'm really, really trying to share the experiences that I've had as opposed to the things that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I was writing this morning and like this idea that social media is like we all are on social media. It is absolutely drawn lines to depression and suffering for a lot of people and addiction, but there's also some components of it, because I also agree with the negative side of social media. There's no doubt about it. And I've also been, on that side of the tracks with it. But I will also say that, last year was a big year for me in trying to sort of turn the Titanic with social media and use social media as opposed to allowing social media to use me. And I wrote about that this morning in the email newsletter that connecting with human beings is really at the core like what I think generates smiles in life, right? When we connect. And so you and I connected over social media and now we're sitting here on the podcast. So
we made it happen. Yeah, 100%.
So we talk about habits here. We talk about a lot of stuff. I want to get your story. I think that would be a fun thing to just get your story. I know that you had battled with mental health and battled with eating disorders, and I also did as well. When I got sober, and I stripped back all the alcohol and the drugs, I was like, I felt like I was in a hole and I was trying to grab onto anything, and like food became like the first thing.
Because it's the easiest.
It's the easiest, and it's essential, right? Like we actually need it.
Yep.
So why don't we walk through that a little bit, and then we'll get into some habit stuff.
Yeah, of course. So I started my first diet when I was 11, and I have a theory about why it started, and my therapist has a theory about why it started. My mom has a theory about why it started. But I think at the end of the day, there was just a lot of transition in my life. I was moving schools, went to a new place, had a bunch of new friends. But also I had grown up with a father who had Lou Gehrig's disease. And I understood, or I was raised to believe, that if you were sick, it meant that you got attention. Yeah, that's the therapist theory. My theory is the transition one. Hers is you saw your mom care for your dad and spend a lot of time with him, a lot of quality time with him because he was so sick. And then there's the other theory where because he was so sick, I didn't want any attention on me, so I literally made myself disappear. Now, of course, it had the opposite effect because I drew the spotlight when you're that ill. But it reached its apex around 15 when I was hospitalized for the first time. 40 days as an inpatient at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, followed by 2 months as an outpatient. And then I made myself a little bit worse as a big FU to my parents for putting me in the hospital in the first place. When I was 17, I was put on kidney dialysis for 2 days. Yeah. So that's how the diet started. But it also, I mean, I say it all the time, but it's that which almost killed me also made me stronger. If it wasn't for my eating disorder, I never would have discovered fitness because I wasn't that person running 100 miles a day or biking excessively. I wasn't purging via exercise. I was actually lifting weights. So in my head, instead of the typical, you look in the mirror and you see someone who's 200 pounds, I saw a mini bodybuilder. I thought because I was 4% body fat and Lee Labrada and Jay Cutler were 4% body fat, that's what I looked like. So I did my first bodybuilding show at 18, fully immersed in my eating disorder, like definitely not healthy, but what I saw in the mirror wasn't what I actually looked like, but it's what made me fall in love with bodybuilding and fitness.
You know, I have a couple of friends who have a really big podcast, and they talk a lot about this, right? This idea that for people with food insecurities and food dysfunction, bodybuilding is such like a scary place to live. You know?
It's a tightrope.
It's a tightrope.
Yeah.
And I know for sure, even to today, like I am, without a doubt, very conscious about what I put into my body. I just am. The reins have been completely, not completely let go of, but like compared to where they were 20 years ago or 19 years ago, you know, it was intense. And I'm kind of grateful for it, to be honest with you, because I had to go through that shit to get to where I'm at today.
Oh, 100%. You have to swing the pendulum to the complete opposite side to understand what balance and moderation actually means and what it is, especially when you're in a field of trying to teach it and coach it to other people.
You know, you're a survivor, right, of this. And this could be a trigger for some people, right? So if you're listening to this and this is a trigger for you, you can make a decision right now, whether you want to stick it out and listen to the podcast or not. Yeah. But I do think talking about this is important because there's a lot of people that struggle. And I'm here to say, and you're here to say, we're living examples of survivors of mental health, whether it's manifested in eating disorders or alcoholism or whatever, you know, mental health issues, because I also want to say that there's a really positive side to mental health, right?
Yeah.
Like when people hear mental health, they're like, oh man, mental health is a two-way street, right? There's like the stuff that you can really struggle with in regards to your mental health, and then there's also mentally healthy, which I feel like I'm pretty strong at today, and I would imagine you are as well.
Yeah.
When you were in that place where you would look in the mirror and you would see something totally different than what other people were seeing, where were you? Like where was your head?
Oh God, I was a champion. I mean, I wish I could explain it to you. Like I would get up there and pose the same way that Arnold got up in Peoria, South Africa in the 70s at the Olympia. And I was just, I saw cameras that weren't there. I saw lights. We're not talking delusion, but the visualization that went on in my head is like the entire audience is for me. I'm going to get up here and just crush it. And I was, at the time, the only teen junior female bodybuilder. So I was taking home hardware after hardware at this show. There were some shows that even created the junior teen female, like women's bodybuilding especially, because they're like, women your age just don't compete. So it was, that visualization was then being reinforced by bringing home all of these trophies. So, I mean, I wish I could say, like, again, I'm not condoning it. It was not a healthy time in my life, but it wasn't insecurity. It was almost a combination of body dysmorphia and so much confidence. That's what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how long did you compete?
I mean, I did my most recent show in 2022. I still compete.
All right.
So I did 8 shows between 2004, 2005. Again, I made myself a lot worse before I got better because I still thought, despite the fact that I was like really between 4 and 5% body fat, according to Adexa, still thought I had to do a peak week. Still thought I had to do the suppositories to lose all the water. Like I took it to the extreme because I was going to be a pro bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. Realized I needed a bit of a break from my eating disorder. We can get into my recovery, but it was about 2005, 2006 that I recovered. I competed in 2008, 2012, 2016, was going to do 2020, but COVID. So competed again in 2021 and 2022. So I've done 13 shows since 2004.
It's a lot of shows.
It's a lot of shows.
I've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 bodybuilding shows, and I just know, like I know how hard it is. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Super duper hard. And if you don't have the ability to do what you say you're going to do and commit no matter what, it doesn't happen, Well,
I think that's the perfect metaphor for life. Like if bodybuilding taught me anything, it's you keep the promises you make to yourself, because regardless of how long it takes, you'll be a success, not because of what happens at the end of the journey, but because along the way you kept all of those promises. Right. So it built discipline in me. I mean, again, this, the eating disorder built a ton of discipline, but the bodybuilding and the commitment and the waking up early, it made me a more efficient businesswoman. It made me a better coach. It's made me a better partner because I understand how to manage my time and my energy better. What
was it like recovering? What was the process?
I think to this day, that was the hardest thing I've ever done because, you mentioned mental health, and of course we're not comparing, right? Regardless of what you're struggling with, it's probably awful, but eating disorders do have the highest mortality rate of any other mental illness out there. So it was actually a life or death decision for me. So in my mind, there was no relapsing. I understand that for some, whether it's depression, alcoholism, if you relapse, there are alternatives. But it was life or death. A relapse meant death for me, and that wasn't an option. So as soon as I started gaining weight, and as soon as I cut off cardio, and as soon as I canceled my gym membership, there was actually no going back to any of those things until I had gotten the blessing of recovery or whatever in my head, whatever benchmark, whatever goalpost I had set for myself at the time.
And how do you stay abstinent from that thinking? Or at least stay abstinent from acting upon that thinking?
Yeah, great question. So when I decided that I was going to come back to it in 2021, I was genuinely nervous, and I found Overeaters Anonymous meetings in Florida. And I attended, I would say, about 4 or 5 consecutively, like once a week, every week. Oh, so Overeaters Anonymous isn't just for people who overeat. It's for anyone who is struggling, has struggled with an eating disorder. And I said, I would like to set myself up for success. Also, my coach knew everything about my history, so he was prepared to handle it. But as soon as I started going to those meetings and hearing the stories while dieting, I said, I am absolutely not there. Like whatever wound I had created, fully healed. There's a scar because I never want to forget where I came from, but this scab isn't even a little bit open. There is no chance that I'm going to go back, not just for myself, but the people around me who care about me. I would never do that to them again.
At least not today.
Yeah. Yeah, I live to see another day, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think that you have to go through hell to be successful. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that the vast majority of successful people have experienced the heat of hell and the pain of some sort of adversity. So now you have that experience, and not everybody gets to have that. And I used to have to say that to myself, like when I got sober and then challenged with food addiction and overcome that, I used to, I remember being like, at certain times, I'd be like, God, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I like this? Like, what is it? Why am I like this?
Yeah.
And when I began to really dive into mindset, the conversation changed to, man, I'm so lucky that I get to experience this.
Yeah.
Because it's real for me. It's very, very real. And I can sit in a room with anyone and tell my story, and it's authentic and real and potentially help someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. I mean, it seems like that's what your life is essentially dedicated to. Like, you're helping people overcome some of the things, or if not all of the things that you've experienced. You know? When you think about fitness, I think a lot of people, if not the majority, let's just say 95% of people that step into the world of fitness and really want to do fitness are doing it to look better. And by the way, I have no problem with that. I think that that's great.
Yeah.
Like, anybody who gives you shit about wanting to look good is missing the mark in life, right?
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to look better.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? You look good, you feel good, you perform good, you're a better person, right? Some of us take it to an extreme. There's no doubt about it. I've certainly been there. You've certainly been there. But when you think about fitness, do you think of it as sort of like a cure-all?
Yeah, I do, because similar to what you said, getting into fitness because you want to look good. Nobody gets into fitness because their life's going well. Regardless, even if it's bodybuilding and you want to reach the apex, there's something wrong, right? Especially if you want to take it to the extreme. You probably have like a little more to deal with first before you compete. But yeah, I would say that fitness is a cure-all because, I mean, not only is it going to make you look better, which might end up solving some problems, it's going to help you feel better, which also might help you solve some problems. And then if we talk about the physiological benefits, the neurotransmitters and the hormones that are released, it can at least help you create space to do more. So even if you don't end up losing those 20 pounds right away, or you don't feel better immediately and you come home and your wife's like, you're such a better person right now, you're opening up the ability to be better down the road. So I love that the space that fitness creates, not to mention the community as well. Again, you might not see the benefits. CrossFit, right? A lot of people do it. We do it. Their bodies don't change doing CrossFit, but they come home with all of the friends in the 4:30 class. And their wife's like, I'm so glad you're out of the house doing things and you don't just come home and you're on like you watch TV or you just come home and eat. Like, you're out doing things with friends you met through fitness. So I don't see a problem that it cannot solve.
Mm-hmm. I would argue to say that humans were designed to move, period. Like, it was like our God-given thing, right? Like, we're designed to move. We were put on 2 feet. We were made with muscles. We've got hands to pick things up. We've got toes to move things around and balance. And unfortunately, over time, well, really in the last probably 150 years, humans have stopped moving at scale, right? Like, we've kind of just like, we've stopped being outside and we've stopped moving. And, 200 years ago, if you told somebody that you were going to sit inside 8 hours at a table, they'd be like,
at least 8 hours.
Yeah. Like, are you like, what's wrong with that person? Like, how is that person's never going to survive life?
Yeah.
It's impossible. Like, if you're not out taking care of business, working in the field, or whatever it is you got to, we do, you're going to die. Yeah. Like, literally, people would probably think that, oh yeah, so what do you do? 40, 50 hours a week, I sit down in a chair. 150 years ago, impossible.
Right.
Would never, ever work.
Yeah.
It would, 1,000 years ago, you're dead.
Right.
You're just
that
dead.
Would not have, that would not have
saying?
flown.
You're
Yeah.
dead. And we've been on the planet for 1 million years, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you think about that, where we're at, everybody, there's obviously a massive nutrition problem going on in this country specifically.
Yep.
But more so, if every single human being in the United States of America just walked, 10,000 steps, 7,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah.
So I personally believe that fitness is the key to happiness. I really do. And, I certainly don't think people need to do fitness the way you and I do.
Yeah.
You don't need to compete in CrossFit. You don't need to do bodybuilding shows. You don't need to track although I do think tracking macros is kind of a cool experience for people to go through. They learn a lot, you know?
I would say it's not. So this is something we also discuss in our coaching program. Funny enough, we barely use the word fitness unless they say it first. We use movement. And it's specifically because so many people who come to us, especially if their mental health is struggling, they are intimidated by the word fit. We're lucky they come to us because we look like we do. Like, because we are intimidating. So it's because we talk about mental health a lot that we seem safer, almost despite what we look like. So we just get people moving. Like you said, those 7,500 steps, forget about the gym, right? We're talking vegetables, water, and 7,500 steps. Now you and I can call that fitness, but we don't call that fitness.
I like it.
We call that movement. Yeah.
I want to talk about habits because I'm sure you got a lot of them.
I do. Yeah.
Morning routine is something that I believe very strongly in.
Yeah.
I've got two different ones. I've got the ideal when I'm home and everything is cool and I'm not traveling.
Yeah.
And then I've got the non-negotiable, which I did this morning.
Your
when I'm
Wednesday
traveling.
morning podcast recording. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also want to say that, like, I think it's important that everybody knows listening, it doesn't matter what your routine is. Everybody can choose their own adventure there. But having a routine that you do consistently every single day to set you up for success with little wins, I believe to be pouring the concrete for the day.
Totally.
What's yours?
So cliche, but my morning routine starts the night before. We always turn our screens off by 8:45. So that's TV, phone, all of it. Computer. Well, laptops have been shut much earlier because laptops are only work, but phone and TV are pleasure. So we close those by 8:45. We are out walking the dogs at 9. And my wife and I kind of have a ritual. At the end of each day, we ask each other, what was the best part of your day? So that even if you think your day was an absolute mess and just so shitty, we pull out the big win from each other. We do our loop. We put the dogs away. We come back, hygiene, and then read for about 15, 20, 25 minutes max, lights out by 10 at the latest. So that's the routine that precedes the routine. The other thing I do, because sometimes I do run a little bit anxious, instead of taking notes on something I'm thinking about on my phone, I have a brain dumping pad beside my bed. So it's just a pen and paper and any last minute thoughts about like client check-ins, business ideas, something that's on my mind, something that's making me anxious. I brain dump, I reflect on the edge of my bed, and then I just get it out of my head so that I can sleep peacefully.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a good habit.
Right? Yeah. Brain dumping, because again, like I have clients who have gotten into it and they say, yeah, I opened my phone and I wrote on a note and I said, you just reset like everything regarding the melatonin. I need it to just be a pad and paper. So then the following morning, we wake up naturally anytime between 6:45 and 7:15, no alarms. Immediately walk the dogs again, and we turn on the Calm app. So we'll either do the Daily J with Jay Shetty or the Daily Calm with Tamara Levitt, and we'll do anywhere from 7 to 11-minute meditation, get back. My wife feeds the dogs. We sit down for breakfast and we say to each other, what are you looking forward to today? So again, even if you have a crazy day of meetings or you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, we want to hear what the light at the end of the tunnel is going to be for you today. Breakfast is always the same. It's Kreatures of Habit, any number of flavors, not a shameless plug. Like, that's actually legit. And then I do, in sequential order, the New York Times Mini, the Wordle, and the Connections on my phone to wake my brain up. And by that time, it's about like 7:30, 7:45. Hygiene. I'm at my desk by 8.
Wow. Yeah, I love when I can ask somebody a morning routine and it's like brrrr, and that's because you know how powerful it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the people that I've chosen to have on the show, I tend to believe, unless I know very specifically that they don't have a morning routine, it's kind of interesting for me to have them. But the majority of the people that I have on the show, I know are going to be like, I'm going to be like, oh, so what's your morning routine? And they're going to be like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Because I know how important it is for me. And like people ask me, what do you think the true key to success is? Or how have you built businesses as an entrepreneur? Like what,
Yeah.
And my answer is, what time did you go to bed? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, what time did you go to bed? That's the key.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It starts yesterday.
yeah, like if you are looking to change and you are on your phone or watching Netflix, which by the way, like I don't mind if you're watching a show on Netflix before bed, but if you're aimlessly on your phone scrolling until 11, 12, 1, and you've now completely given your power, your life, your energy, your soul to every single other person on the planet because you're now consumed on a piece of technology.
Yeah.
How do you expect to get restful sleep? Right? Like how do you expect if you don't have the ability to shut it down? I think the hardest thing to do is go to bed early. I think it's so much harder than waking up early because if you go to bed early, you are naturally going to wake up early.
Yeah.
And if you wake up early, you have literally set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that you mentioned something. Well, I love that you didn't even mention the melatonin production part with the blue light. You mentioned giving your energy away, right? Because I think a lot of the scientific studies, well, I know for a fact that they talk about like essentially you reset your sleep-wake cycle every time you look at that light. But what you said about consuming other people's content, and you never know what's going to show up on your phone. It might be something that agitates you or aggravates you. It might be positive, most likely isn't. It might also give you FOMO right before bed, right? It's Tuesday night and your friends are out. You're in bed because like Michael Chernow told you were supposed to be, and your friends didn't invite you out. Hey, now the wheels are spinning. You're caught in the cycle all over again. Like no good comes of scrolling before bed, psychologically or physiologically.
I've had a lot of people give me pushback on the statement that I tend to make pretty regularly, which is like nothing really productive happens after 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And some people that are way more creative people are like, hey, I'm a night owl. Like for me, working
from like 11 to 2.
Yeah, from like 11 to 2 is like where I get all the best work done. And so authentically, I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I only share my thoughts, my experience, my opinions. And so anybody who wants to push back, I'm like, great, like awesome. Maybe, I'm not going to try it, but if that works for you, great.
Yeah.
If you look at the science, right? Like if you're going to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and waking up at 11 or 12, chances are you're not as productive when everybody else is productive in the world.
Right.
Right? Like the most productive people are typically productive between 8 o'clock in the morning, or in my case, in your case, like 7 o'clock in the morning and noon. Right? And then it starts to like slow down.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You talked to us about your evening routine already, which I think if you could just walk us through it one more time, because I really do think that the wind down is super duper, as if not more important than the morning.
Yeah. So typically about 8:45, the TV goes off and phones are like plugged in and charged where they're going to stay for the night. And that's it. We go outside, we walk our dogs. We ask each other what the best part of one another's day is, kind of have a recap, maybe gossip about our friends if we want.
Which is always fun.
Right? Just to catch up like, hey, what did you and your friends talk about? Dogs go to bed. We start hygiene, like teeth, skincare routine, crawl into bed. Katie's a huge fan of fiction, specifically historical fiction. I love self-development. I've recently had to stop reading self-development before bed because it gets me wired all over again. Either I'm thinking about all of the things I could/should be doing, or I have all these great ideas that I would like to start implementing. So this brain dumping pad started getting full, and Katie's like, you can't do that before bed anymore. So I've recently gotten back into Dan Brown. So Angels and Demons, the Illuminati fun, stuff like that.
Is it fiction?
It is fiction.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I had to get over the guilty pleasure part. I was like, man, I'm doing something that's not productive.
By the way, I just got to say that you and I could very well be the same person just in general.
Right?
Like I feel like I do the same thing with my wife all the time.
Yeah.
But me getting out of the nonfiction arena and into fiction, at first I'm like, oh man, like, is this really going to be worth it? And then I get there and I'm like, fuck, man, where have I been?
It's so much fun. Oh my gosh. So we went to Strand, the bookstore the other day. I was like,
great.
I think I need to get some stuff for the way home. But I'm currently reading The Power of Full Engagement, which is self-development, but it's a lighter read. And I read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And so it was just light enough. But after this, Katie said, it's time. You can alternate, but you cannot. You did 2 in a row of self-development. That's it.
I've got another, I'm doing 75 hard.
I know.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I know it's weird to say, but it's actually a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
And reading is a part of my routine, but I miss days. Right? I miss days straight, whatever I do. On this thing, I cannot miss days. So I'm just like plowing through books, right? I'm plowing through books.
Yep.
And I'm reading The Art of Power right now.
Okay.
Which is it's an awesome book and it's a quick read. But, I feel like that reading component before bed, I'm trying to think if there are moments, it is stimulating, right? Like it is stimulating unless you're reading something that doesn't make you want to pull out a highlighter, right?
Or dog-ear the pages.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I have caught myself a number of times being like, man, should I go get a pen? Should I need to underline? I need to remember this.
Yep.
So that's a good point for anybody that's like reading right before bed.
Yeah.
Even though I think it's way better than scrolling, it is still a stimulation,
Right.
So try to find stuff.
Again, we're still finding our balance, right? Like we got to swing the pendulum.
I think fiction is definitely the way to go before
100%
bed.
it is, yeah.
I think it's the way to go before bed.
Yeah.
What are some other habits that you do throughout your day to keep you focused, keep you on the path?
I feel like I'm giving my wife so much credit because she is the one that keeps. So we say like, she's the wings that keeps me in the sky, but I'm the head that keeps her heart on the ground. So we balance each other out really well. She has made me start taking a lunch. So she put it as a recurring event in my calendar from 12 to 12:15. So no one can book me for a meeting. Like it doesn't show up on my Calendly. And that's huge because I'm not eating frantically at my desk or hoping that someone shows up late to a Zoom call so that I can have sustenance. I actually have no choice, but she won't even bring me a meal at the desk anymore. I have to go into the kitchen like a real human and prep my food and then eat it at the counter, also like a normal human. So we've recently started doing that, I'd say since the beginning of 2024. Prior to that, I was that person that ate at their desk while answering emails or sending a voice note in between bites. But it's made such a difference in terms of grounding me. Again, I think because it makes me feel like a normal human. I'm not a slave to my laptop or the next sales call or my DMs. It's just 2 people having lunch together. So that's been a great habit. 4:30 CrossFit class. I was going to Crunch sometimes. I was working out of our home gym, which is pretty well equipped. But if someone wanted to book me for a sales call at 4, even though technically that's the end of my workday, I wouldn't say no. Or like, hey, why don't you just choose the next availability in my calendar, even if it's a couple days from now. I kept pushing off my workouts. And finally, I just made the decision to join an actual CrossFit box in St. Pete. And now the 4:30 class are my best friends. And if you miss one day, they said, where were you? You're not allowed to miss days. But it's made such a difference for my mental health and my physical health because nothing is getting pushed off. Not my physical health, not my fitness, but also not prioritizing Jamie the human and Jamie the athlete versus Jamie the CEO and business owner.
I think that's so crucial. I love that you brought up specifically the mindful eating, right? Like in the book that I'm reading right now, there's 2 things that are just consistently brought up basically every other page, if not on every page. Mindful walking and mindful eating. The 2 things.
Okay.
And the way the author talks about it is basically like whether we think we are living in the present, chances are we are never ever taking the time to think about our feet hitting the ground when we walk. Or lifting off the ground. That he describes as being truly present and truly mindful. And so even if you can practice this a few times a day, like you're outside, you see a tree 30 feet ahead of you, you are going to pause. You're going to say, I'm going to mindful walk from my place here to that tree. I'm going to feel my feet lift off the ground. I'm going to feel my feet touch the ground, and I'm going to do it nice and mindfully, and I'm not going to care about anything else in the world.
Yeah.
Similarly, he talks about if you are eating food and you are answering phone calls or on your or on the email or on the computer, you are selling yourself short. Mm-hmm. If you cannot be present for the fucking 10 minutes or 20 minutes that it takes to eat a meal that's nourishing your body, you're totally taking life for granted. So I love that you brought that up, because that's something that I've also been trying to focus on, and I'm not great at it.
Yeah.
It is so hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard, specifically the mindful walking piece. You know, like I take the dogs out in the morning, and like I immediately just want to like listen to something that's going to, you know, bring value, right? I'm like, boom, I'm out with the dogs, podcast, you know?
Right.
And so what I've started to do is like, nope, I leave the phone at home. I'm with the dogs. The dogs are awesome. Why am I not like paying attention to my dogs?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I love those habits. And I also think, you know, I'm very lucky where my office is actually in my CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
So they were building out these offices in the back of this huge space at the CrossFit gym, and they were like, hey, like, would you want an office? And I was at this other office, and I was like,
Hell
like,
yes.
how does it get better than that?
I would love to mix business and pleasure.
Yeah. So, you know, I get that, right? Like, there's like this, you know, there's a time every single day that I'm working out. It's like it's in my calendar. It's blocked out.
That's it. Yeah.
So let's just talk about a habit that you've broken, how you broke it, and how it's changed your life.
Yeah. Okay. So are you familiar with the CRM High Level?
No.
Okay. It's like HubSpot or any of those CRMs. And it's where all of our clients communicate with us. So they can text or email. So they don't have my like personal iPhone number. They have the number of my CRM, which still goes to my phone, pop-up notification, but instead of as a text message, it says High Level. And I would check High Level all the time because it would pop up. So if a client was messaging me at 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10:15, I would respond, because without customer service, I don't have a business. I want to make sure everyone's happy. Also, I never knew whether the question, again, because so much of what we do is mental health related, I thought I was responsible for their mental health if they were to message me at 8:30 breaking down. So the bad habit was checking High Level technically after I was supposed to be putting my phone away, or just even working when I was supposed to be present with my wife and the dogs. How I broke it, I don't know if we can talk about this, but I went on a plant medicine retreat in Austin at the beginning of the year. Okay, perfect. So it was 4 days this past January. So I only recently broke this habit that was absolutely killing us. We essentially macrodosed or overdosed on psilocybin, sassafras, MDMA, and a couple others.
All at the
Thursday
same time?
night. Yeah.
Wow.
A little bit on Thursday night. And then Friday was integration, and then again heavily on Saturday, and then Sunday was integration. And what's beautiful about plant medicine in general is it gives you perspective. Because it creates new neural pathways in your brain, you're not always taking the path of least resistance, right? That way you've been driving to the gym ever since you moved into your house, you're being taught a completely different way to drive to the gym. So I could finally see my life, and more importantly, our life together through the lens of not me. And I saw that what I was doing was creating this giant wall between us in our relationship, which is the most important thing in the world to me. And the problem was I'd been doing it so long, even she had become numb to it. So she had started distracting herself and focusing on other things. And I was justifying it by saying, yeah, but look how successful Filer Fitness has become. Look how much we're growing. Look, we're taking on new employees. We're taking on hundreds of clients, and they're not unhappy. Like, we don't have customer service complaints because of all the hard work I'm doing. And what it came down to was that I was focusing so hard on building a nice house that I forgot to build a home, or that I neglected to build a home. And as soon as plant medicine gave me that perspective that I had the nicest castle and the perfect queen who was all alone in that tower because I was busy building shit and busying myself with.
Wow.
That's how I broke the habit. And now there are no, like, high levels not on my phone. It doesn't pop up. It pops up when I open my laptop, which is meant for business. Phone is for fun.
I have a similar story that I kind of love, like when I hear something that I identify with, I intertwine my stuff.
Yeah.
My story doesn't include plant medicine, but my wife, I remember when I was building Meatball Shop, it was my first business and it took off like crazy.
Yeah.
It was like somebody had lit a match to like a gasoline factory and it was nuts. And in my mind as a young entrepreneur, I'm thinking to myself, this is it. Yeah. All I got to do is work around the clock.
Yeah.
I'm going to build the empire. All I got to do is work around the clock and be here.
That's all it takes. Yeah.
That's it. I just got to keep doing this. I got to keep being here 18 hours a day, not take days off, not get good sleep, do push-ups in the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like this is it. And I forgot that I have a woman who I love, like with all my heart, who is watching this guy who she loves completely get consumed by a business. But the excuse was, I'm building our life.
Yeah.
I'm
Don't you
building
see?
a life.
Yeah.
And so after probably 18 months of that, no days off, and that's not in the gym. I'm talking about at work, right?
Yeah.
No time, like no date night. If she wanted to see me, she had to come to the restaurant.
Wow.
She took me aside and she said, I love you a lot, but I'm here to tell you, this is not sustainable. There's no way. Like, I know you're not a selfish person, but I'm here to tell you that you are completely guised by what's happening here.
Yeah.
And this is not going to serve, like, our relationship will not survive if this continues.
Yeah.
And so that's when we decided to buy a house out of New York City. And that's when I had sort of my like plant medicine journey, right? Where I was like taken into the nature and learned that like boundaries are arguably one of the most important things anybody can do in life, but specifically as a small business owner, where you genuinely wear the weight of the world on your shoulders and you feel like the decisions you make are going, like every decision you make is going to impact the business in a good way or a bad way. Right. And and so I had to learn that, like, boom. I mean, we even talked about it right before we jumped on here.
Yeah.
I shut it down.
Yeah.
And so I think for anybody listening, boundaries are something that I've been talking also a lot about, and it's so great to hear you talk about it as well. I think boundaries for relationships and specifically intimate romantic relationships are so important, because not all the time does our partner understand that, like, it's not selfish that we're doing it. It's for this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like everybody feels. Yeah. Everybody feels. And just because you feel a certain way about the hours that you're dedicating to this thing doesn't mean that the person that you love most feels the same fucking way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just finish up with your sort of commitment to helping the LGBTQ plus community work through a lot of things using your technique and your style.
Yeah.
Where did you feel like that was going to be something that was going to be a big part of your business?
So it goes back to one of the first jobs I ever had was working for bodybuilding.com. I don't know if you were ever on the forums, the bodybuilding.com forums. Okay, they were super popular. Teddy, that's where Teddy and I met, like back in 2007. And at the time, there was a specific thread or a section that had no females in it whatsoever. It was run by a guy. Do you remember the company Civation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there was zero female representation. So I messaged the guy who kind of owned the thread. And I said, hey, not for anything, but you're sponsoring all of these male athletes. I know for a fact females take your product. I'm one of them. Have you ever thought about maybe incorporating a woman into your marketing or literally anything? And I'm like, well, no. Would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I became their first sponsored athlete. Got a little bit, again, this confidence is a theme that runs right through my life. So I had a little bit of confidence. I was working on bodybuilding.com all the time. I messaged the editor-in-chief, Chris Gethin, and I said, hey, I'm a huge avid fan. I watch the Olympia. I watch the Arnold. And Lane Norton is doing a fantastic job, but he is shutting his laptop off as soon as the male bodybuilders go off. you're not covering, at the time it was only men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, figure, and fitness. There was no bikini, men's classic, men's physique at the time. And I said, have you ever thought about maybe, I don't know, like a female covering the female events? And he was like, no, would you like to? And I said, absolutely I would. So Lane would literally hand me the laptop, and this was before the days of live stream. So I'd be like, so-and-so lady looking really good with capped shoulders. Hit enter, post. So I've always felt like I had an opportunity to represent underrepresented. Well, at the time it was women. It was women in sport in such a male-dominated industry. And I did really, really well. And I worked for them for 5 years. And then I worked for another bodybuilding magazine in Canada. I didn't come out until I was 26. So all of this was just in the name of like lady power until I came out. And then I was like, man, the LGBTQ plus community is significantly underrepresented. Like if I was just trying to fight for women back in 2007, 2016 is a completely different ballgame. So what I noticed after coming out was there was a heaviness to our community. And I think this is something that underscores a lot of minority or underrepresented communities. I mean, I'm also a Canadian Jew, right? So living in America, right? Like there's also, I get it. I get when someone doesn't have a voice. So my business coach, when I started my fitness company, said, you have to niche down. I said, why? I just want to serve everyone. I want to help everyone. And he said, because you'll never make any money if you don't. I said, okay, fine, I'll help women. And he's like, not good enough. So, okay, I'll help gay women. And he's like, okay, that's a start. 1.5 years into business, I was losing clients in droves to anxiety. Jamie, this just isn't the right time. I'm anxious. I can't get to the gym. Tracking my macros, I'm completely losing, like I don't have the emotional bandwidth to track my macros. Or my wife is having a depressive episode. I have to be there for her. I can't track my macros, go to the gym, do my cardio, get my steps, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, if I could just come up, so at the time it was a little bit selfish, if I could just come up with like a cure for anxiety, I would stop losing money. And then it just completely changed. I said, wait a second. Now instead of saying, thank you so much for helping me lose 15 pounds, it's thank you so much for giving me my life back. Thank you so much for not letting the crippling feeling of having depression take over every day. Thank you so much for giving me the tools to give to my wife so that she doesn't stay in bed 5 days a week. And I was like, why wasn't I doing this all along? So that's how that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story.
It's powerful when you can change how someone thinks, not just what they're doing every day. Like I know it, I mean, I get it. We talk about habits, so important, but there is a thought that precedes the belief, that precedes the action, that precedes the habit. So we can talk about habits all we want, but what about the actions, belief, and thoughts that came first?
You know, I think it's really hard to control our first thought.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe monks are able to, maybe they've figured out a system, you know, that like can control. I see that monitor. I think it's too hectic for me immediately. This is like not my wheelhouse. I don't want to go play on that monitor, right? Like, you know, so for some people, boom, the camera's right there. I hate this. I can't do this, you know? And so that first thought is typically like totally out of our control. And I think what you're saying is, let me help you understand how to appreciate that first thought. And then take a second of time or 2 seconds or 10 seconds or a minute of time or an hour between that first thought and the action you take.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah. Because the thoughts, when compounded, turn into beliefs. And we believe what we believe, right? Whatever it is. We all have hills that we die on. Problem is, too many of us are maybe literally or figuratively like dying as a result of too many automatic negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So we do need to solve that problem right when it happens.
I think this is an amazing way to end this thing. I think that's such a great piece of advice, you know, that sort of that thought, belief, action, habit. I love that. I love that process. Where can everybody listening find you?
I am on Instagram at JAIM91, Jaime91, Facebook, Jaime Filer. Feel free to add me as a friend. Would love to chat.
Awesome, Jaime.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation. It's like everything that I was hoping for. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, if you enjoyed that as much as I did, obviously you saw me here. I was like fixated on Jaime. I was like, it was like she's such a great, articulate person and communicator on the things that have made her successful. Do me a favor. It's the one thing there's two things I ask of you guys typically every week, but the first thing I ask of you is to share this podcast with friends. Share it with friends, share it with your family, share it with anybody who you think could potentially listen to it, put it on social media. I know for sure there's an enormous amount of value that we just covered here, and I'm super grateful for Jaime popping on the show. I also want to ask you, if you've got a few minutes in between emails, give us a 5-star rating and review. That is how this podcast continues to grow. That is how more people find out about us. And that is how this thing will continue to flow into your headphones on a weekly basis. I'm super stoked that Jaime came. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. You know the deal, guys. I appreciate you. I love you. And until the next one, y'all, peace.